Witness a teacher's powerful revenge in court. Fluorescent lights hummed a sterile drone overhead, flickering off the chipped white walls of room 214B in Harrison High, a room that smelled of old textbooks and damp carpets. Ms. Taylor's heart thudded heavily as she stood at the doorway, eyes scanning a sea of faces veiled in cool indifference and simmering defiance. The chattering drifted into a low murmur punctuated by the scrape of desks and the occasional slammed locker upstairs. The air thrummed with a tension that wrapped its cold fingers around her spine. Her chestnut hair was pulled back neatly, but the nervous tightness in her jaw betrayed the weight of the moment. She adjusted her vibrant crimson blouse, the final touch to an ensemble that was a deliberate bloom of boldness in this subdued, skeptical space. She stepped forward, the worn-out soles of her shoes muted against scuffed linoleum. The door clicked shut behind her, the sound slicing through the cacophony, demanding hush. Suddenly, silence descended, a fragile hold as every indifferent or hostile eye fixed on her with sharpened curiosity. "Good morning, I'm Ms. Taylor." Her voice rose clear but gentle, laced with a thread of hope. A lazy smirk curled at the corner of a boy's mouth in the back row. He swapped a crooked glance with his friends, a silent ellipsis of disdain. Tweaked smartphones appeared recording, live streaming, a digital audience gathering with a flicker of excitement. From the corner, a girl shot her a cold glare, arms folded tight like a fortress. The classroom shifted. It wasn't warmth or welcome that greeted her, but a battleground masked in casual cruelty. "Ms. Taylor," a sneering voice cut through the silence. She looked up sharply, locking with the speaker's glittering eyes. It was Aaron, the ringleader, his privileged aura thick and impervious. "You know, we don't need inspiration. We're fine the way we are." His words dripped sarcasm, an acid burn in the brittle air. A chorus of snorts and chuckles rose, rippling through the room like a tidal wave. Laughter flashed from faces half hidden behind textbooks, a flash mob of derision. Ms. Taylor's gaze didn't waver. Instead, a subtle resolve gathered in her eyes, no longer just a teacher, but a warrior walking into the heart of a silent war. The clock ticked on, the oppressive pressure stifling and yet strangely awakening. She scanned the room slowly, catching the hungry eyes of a few silent ones, students who dared not laugh, whose gaze held flickers of silent desperation or buried kindness. Then the bell rang. A piercing clang through the stillness. The sound was stark and final, like a call to arms, demanding a reckoning. The students shuffled restlessly, Aaron's smirk lingering as he tossed a crumpled paper onto her desk. Ms. Taylor's eyes narrowed just enough to see the contempt inked in the jagged tear of the note, a shredded resignation letter that fluttered, mocking, as he laughed. The screen of a smartphone captured the moment with brutal clarity, the virality of humiliation sealing her fate in millions of unseen eyes. Her face flushed crimson, but instead of crumbling, something within her steadied. A slow, steady breath bridged the gap between shame and embers of unyielding hope. The classroom emptied, whispers trailing like smoke. The door latched closed behind Ms. Taylor, and the muted light shifted, plunging the room into long shadows. Yet somewhere within those shadows, a flicker of light pulsed, small but unwavering. And as the hum of the hallway grew louder, Ms. Taylor remained, poised at the threshold, not defeated, but a quiet storm gathering strength for a fight that had only just begun. The echo of laughter ricocheted softly in the vacant classroom after the last student had filed out, leaving behind a heavy silence thick enough to suffocate. Ms. Taylor sank into the worn chair behind her desk, the polished oak surface scarred with countless etched initials and whispered promise. Sand let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The torn remnants of her resignation letter lay strewn across the floor, the jagged edges mocking her with their cruel finality. The fading light through the grimy windows cast fractured shadows, painting a bleak mosaic on the cracked tile floor. A distant school bell rang, sharp and imperious, slicing through the stillness, a reminder that time marched on without mercy or reprieve. It might well have been tolling for her, the sound of a hope quietly extinguished. She pushed aside the scattered papers and ran a tired hand through her chestnut hair, tension wrinkling her brow. The weight of the stares, the sneers, the recorded humiliation settled deep in her bones, constricting like the invisible chains of bias and systemic injustice that twisted through the school's very foundation. Yet, beneath the anger and the ache, a spark flickered, burning stubborn and bright against the night. Ms. Taylor's expressive eyes shimmered with silent fury, her warm smile a distant ember threatening to reignite. Her mind raced through the faces in the classroom, the privileged boys with their smug superiority, the administrators who turned blind eyes, the classmates who had refused even a flicker of kindness. All guardians of a system designed to crush those like her and her students. Her voice, broken yet resolute, whispered into the hush, "Is this what they want? Silence?" An unanswered question that swirled in the shadows, gathering momentum. Against the cold isolation, a movement stirred deep within her, the unyielding drive to fight, not just for herself, but for the students left vulnerable, voiceless in the machine of prejudice. She glanced again at the torn letter on the ground, not a surrender but a symbol of the battles waged behind closed doors, the personal cost of standing firm. Her gaze lifted to the window where dim streetlights swayed amidst the rising night. Somewhere in the distance, a car's headlights pierced the darkness, a beacon of hope slicing the gloom. Ms. Taylor reached down, picking up a small notebook left behind, a gift or a silent alley's voice, and opened its pages with tentative fingers. The words inside were fragile threads of empathy and understanding, reaching out across the divide. A faint but unmistakable warmth welled in her chest. The room, once engulfed in shadows, seemed to hold a breath, waiting, watching. And within that silent pause a subtle promise that the fight was just beginning, and that change, no matter how slow, was possible. The bell's distant echo faded into a soft, hopeful murmur as Ms. Taylor straightened, eyes alight with renewed purpose. She stood, the torn letter folded carefully in her hand, symbolizing wounds that would heal and a future she was only beginning to claim. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the rows of bleachers lining the sprawling courtyard, casting long, fading shadows that seemed to stretch into the restless heart of the high school. The tension that had crackled through room 214B lingered in the stale air, a ghostly residue of youthful cruelty and hidden battles. Ms. Taylor remained behind her desk, the torn fragments of her resignation letter collected neatly in one hand, as if holding the broken pieces of more than paper fragments of hope fractured by derision. Her expressive eyes, usually warm with the light of determination, bore the heavy shimmer of exhaustion and doubt. Around her, the muted hum of distant students outside the classroom blended with the faint scrape of janitorial carts and the intermittent creak of lockers shifting with the school's slow exhalation. The familiar school bell, that relentless summons, seemed less like a call to class and more like a countdown to chaos. Yet amidst the bleakness, a tremor stirred, a fragile pulse of possibility resisting the oppressive weight of invisibility. Her gaze shifted to the small spiral-bound notebook left on her desk, its cover worn soft from handling, the edges bent with quiet reverence. The faded handwriting inside was raw and unpolished but unmistakably earnest, the reflections of a student unseen yet deeply heard. Words of empathy, courage, and subtle rebellion rose from its pages, weaving a delicate tapestry of trust between teacher and learner. A faint smile, fragile and cautious, flickered on Ms. Taylor's lips, breaking through the shadowed veil. The words she read thawed the ice encasing her spirit, hinting that beneath the surface of hostility and fear, pockets of solidarity awaited discovery. In the dimming light, her fingers brushed over the torn letter, once more a symbol of battles fought and dreams deferred. It was a wound and a call, the torn edges mirroring the jagged path ahead. Her eyes lifted toward the window where the sun dipped lower, bleeding amber hues into the encroaching dusk. The playground beyond was silent now, but the rustle of autumn leaves whispered of change, carrying the subtle promise of renewal. The school bell tolled again, a sharp, insistent clang that sliced through the quiet, signaling not just an end but an awakening. Her breath deepened, steady and resolute. The room around her seemed to brighten imperceptibly as if the scattered embers of resistance kindled into flame. Ms. Taylor rose slowly, the slight curve of her mouth now a quiet declaration, a decision forged in pain yet tempered by hope. With notebook in hand and resolve braced like armor, she stepped toward the door, eyes meeting the shadows where the bullied and the brave alike gathered silently, unseen but no longer unheard. The light shifted the room alive with possibility, and the fight for justice moved beyond whispered fears into the dawn of bold, unyielding courage. And as the door softly clicked open, the world awaited her next step. The autumn wind rattled the cracked window panes of Miss Taylor's classroom, sending a shiver through the chill-filled air. Outside, the suburban high school was a patchwork of fall colors, the golden leaves tumbling across the empty playground like whispers of change. Warm sunlight slipped unevenly through the blinds, casting bars of light that flickered with the sway of the branches, as if nature itself was pulsing with tension. Inside, Miss Taylor sat behind her desk, the stale scent of dry erase markers and aged textbooks wrapping around her like a cloak. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched the simple, navy blue notebook left by an unseen student, the notebook whose pages had rekindled a muted flame within her weary heart. The handwriting inside was uneven, filled with raw truths and unfinished dreams. It spoke of pain, longing, and the cautious stirrings of hope. She closed the notebook slowly, the faint rustle of its pages breaking the silence like a fragile heartbeat. Beyond the glass door, distant footsteps echoed down the hallway, hurrying, indifferent, unaware, and yet to her, they sounded like the steady march of a battle only just beginning. The room seemed smaller, tighter, the weight of those who doubted her pressing in like the gathering dusk. Her expressive eyes, once bright with idealism, flickered with shadows of past humiliation but now gleamed with tentative resolve. The vibrant hues of her blouse, the proud stand her posture carried still intact, spoke of a strength barely contained. Her gaze shifted to the torn fragments of her resignation letter pinned jaggedly on the bulletin board, the paper's uneven edges a visceral symbol of dreams shredded. That letter, once her refuge, now embodied her pain and defiance intertwined. Taking a slow breath, Ms. Taylor rose, the click of her heels a quiet declaration reverberating in the empty room. She crossed to the window, her hands pressed lightly against the cold glass, head bowed briefly in contemplation. The school bell's sharp clang sliced the air, a piercing call to order that shook through the building's core, pulsing in her ears like a call to arms. Turning swiftly, there was a subtle shift, a silent promise in her eyes that the fight was far from over. Through the crackling whispers and unseen alliances forming in dimmed hallways, she began to envision footholds small but steadfast among those who shared her unspoken truths. Her voice, when it came, was a low murmur carrying the weight of a vow. This is only the beginning. Behind the closed door, the light flickered once more, and in that light, shadows danced, done predictable, unruly, yet imperfectly beautiful. And beyond the blind eyes and sharpened doubts, the first fragile threads of change slowly began to weave themselves into the fabric of the school's beating heart. But unanswered questions lingered. How long before those threads would unravel? And who would stand to weave them anew? The quiet held its breath, and Ms. Taylor, solitary yet unyielding, stepped again into the storm. The hallways of Harrison High were restless with tension. Whispers ricocheted off the peeling paint and cracked lockers like whispers behind closed doors. Ms. Taylor's footsteps echoed softly against the cold tile as she made her way to the staff room, her mind a whirlwind of anxious calculations. The student notebook, still fresh in her thoughts, mingled with the prickling sensation that the opposition was mounting, their shadows lengthening with every step she took. She arrived to find a group of teachers clustered around, conversations halting reluctantly to assess her presence. The small circle of allies she'd begun to build seemed fragile, faces etched with their own reservations and silent fears. A sigh escaped Ms. Taylor's lips, the weight of effort pressing down heavier by the day. In the classroom, a storm was brewing. The bullies, led by Aaron, had become bolder, their cruel games escalating. Late whispers of sabotage and exclusion stirred unrest amongst students. The administration, wary and disjointed, offered platitudes of concern but no action, leaving Ms. Taylor to battle a system both seen and unseen. During a tense faculty meeting, Ms. Taylor stood firm amid the swirl of accusations and defenses. Principal Harrison's eyes avoided hers, a silent capitulation veiled beneath bureaucratic language. "We're committed to a safe environment," he intoned, "but these matters require due process." The fragile alliances Ms. Taylor nurtured began to fray as intimidation seeped into the shadows. A prized classroom projector was sabotaged days before an important presentation. A whispered warning was slipped into her mailbox, unsigned but unmistakably cold. Her phone buzzed relentlessly anonymous messages designed to wear down resolve. In one quiet moment, Ms. Taylor sat alone in the dimly lit classroom, the soft glow of the desk lamp illuminating the edges of the torn resignation letter pinned to the corkboard, a symbol not just of personal pain, but the systemic fractures she confronted daily. Her hands clenched the notebook once more, fingers tracing the empathetic script like a lifeline. She inhaled deeply, breath steadying. "They want me silenced," she whispered, jaw firm yet voice frail. "But I won't disappear. Not now." Outside, the school bell tolled unmistakably, a haunting clang that reverberated through empty corridors. It was both an ending and a call to arms. The furious energy in the hallways after class pressed down, pressures mounting from every direction. Ms. Taylor's face, illuminated by the flickering classroom projector screen, reflected a complex mosaic: fear-mingled steadfastness, vulnerability interlaced with vehement determination. Each smile she forced in the halls was a battle against exhaustion. Each encouraging word, a testament to unyielding hope. Soon, a growing group of students, some silent, some bold, began to rally subtly, their courage a tentative bloom within the hostile landscape. Anonymous notes of encouragement, whispered conversations exchanged behind bookshelves, and hurried sign-ups for after-school discussions hinted at a quiet uprising. Yet danger lurked nearer still. Ms. Taylor received an unexpected Philia video account revealing hidden acts of harassment and conspiracy among the bullies. The footage, raw and damning, was a fragile weapon in the fight, yet the administration's silence stretched longer, heavier. As the late afternoon sun dipped beyond the horizon, casting long shadows into the classroom, Ms. Taylor stared at the screen flickering with the painful truths. A surge of emotion, fury, exhaustion, resolve coursed through her veins. Suddenly, a new voice pierced the tension through the doorway. A small group of black students stepped in, their eyes sharp with solidarity and courage. They silently placed their hands on the desks in spoken commitment, a promise of unity. Ms. Taylor's gaze met theirs, a gasp caught in her throat, a fragile bridge of hope in a sea of adversity. But just as the moment seemed to breathe with possibility, the door swung open again. The principal's stern face filled the frame, a cold shadow passing over the hopeful tableau. "This meeting is over." The threat hung palpably, a silent warning that the war for justice was just beginning and that the forces arrayed against change would not relent. The room held its breath, a poignant pause charged with uncertainty, courage, and the fierce promise of a battle yet to be won. The school building exhaled a heavy, suffocating breath as dusk crept into its dim corridors, shadows pooling in corners and snaking along the worn linoleum. Ms. Taylor sat alone in the empty classroom, the hum of flickering fluorescent lights above a stark reminder of the cold, sterile walls around her. The remnants of her torn resignation letter lay crumpled on the floor, a fractured symbol of shattered dreams and battles fought in silence. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clasped the USB drive, cold and heavy, containing what could finally expose the truth. The video evidence, raw, unedited, played back scenes of the bullies' true nature, whispered slurs, orchestrated taunts, and orchestrated schemes meant to break her spirit. Each frame burned her eyes, a painful mirror reflecting not only cruelty but a system's complacency. The classroom door loomed shut beyond her, a boundary not just of space but of the barriers entrenched in the institution walls that seemed impenetrable, built by years of neglect and bias. Ms. Taylor's gaze drifted to the torn letter again, this time its jagged edges a deeper wound, symbolizing not defeat but the fractures within the fabric she sought to mend. Her breath caught as the weight of betrayal, both personal and systemic, pressed down with crushing force. "They don't want this to end," she whispered to the silence, the words drifting into the static hum. From beyond the classroom, muted footsteps echoed, approaching, halting. A small group of students appeared, their eyes wary yet resolute. Among them, a few black students, faces set in determined lines, carrying notebooks and phones silently. Their presence was a shield and a spark, tangible proof that she was no longer alone. Encouraged yet burdened, Ms. Taylor rose and spoke with quiet resolve. "This is bigger than us now. It's not just about my fight, it's about every voice that has been silenced." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, a collective breath held before the plunge into uncertainty. But hope was brittle. Soon came a message that shattered the momentum: a formal letter from administration denying any wrongdoing, dismissing her claims as unsubstantiated, a thin veneer protecting the deeper rot below. The group's faces fell, whispers of disbelief and fear mingling with clenched fists and silent vows. She held out the USB drive, voice firm despite the hollow ache. "If they won't stand for justice, then we'll make the world see." Her proclamation hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown against complacency, but with it came the ominous knowledge that the path ahead was fraught with hardship and isolation. As they gathered their strength, the faint tolling of the school bell echoed, a signal not just of ending class but the beckoning call to relentless action. Ms. Taylor's eyes flicked to the window. Streetlights blinked alive as night settled, spots of light in the deepening dark, fragile yet defiant. The classroom dimmed into shadows, yet in that darkness flickered an unmistakable spark, the first pulse of a fight far from over, a promise to rise from the ruins. And with the USB clutched close, she stepped out, ready to face the storm that would test every fiber of her courage and conviction. The school corridors stretched endlessly under the flickering fluorescent lights, their hum a harsh accompaniment to the weight sinking deep within Ms. Taylor's chest. A biting wind swept through cracked windows, carrying rain-slicked leaves and chilled whispers that seemed to echo her own unraveling. She moved silently through the hallways, her vibrant attire muted by the cold, her expressive eyes dulled by insomnia and betrayal. Her steps faltered as she reached the once familiar classroom, now a hollow shell where laughter had twisted into jeers and trust into suspicion. The air inside was stale, thick with the residue of broken promises and shattered spirits. At her desk, the remnants of the torn resignation letter rested, a symbol of dreams dismantled and dignity challenged. She reached out tentatively, fingertips brushing the jagged edges. The paper crumbled beneath her touch, scattering fragments like pieces of herself scattered in the wind. Her breath caught in her throat, uneven and shallow, as memories surged unbidden. Faces once filled with potential and innocence flashed before her, some masked in hostility, others veiled in silence. The students whispered conspiracies, the administration's cold indifference, the bullies' triumphant smirks, all colliding in a suffocating storm that threatened to drown her resolve. A distant bell tolled, its sharp clang reverberating through empty halls, a cruel reminder of time slipping away, moments lost in a battle seemingly destined to be won by shadows. In the quiet sanctuary of an empty bathroom, she sought refuge, the harsh fluorescent light casting stark shadows under her weary eyes. Her reflection stared back, a woman battle-worn but not broken, pain etched deeply, yet a flicker of defiance remained. What remains when hope is stolen? Her whisper was unsteady, a fragile thread in the vast silence. The answer escaped her amid the echoing drip of a leaky faucet. Night deepened as thunder rolled distantly, rain tapping relentless rhythms against panes, blending with the turmoil within. The classroom window became a canvas for flickering streetlights and fractured dreams. She curled into herself on the cold floor, heartbeat a hollow drum, feeling the abyss widen beneath her. Yet beneath the weight of despair, a solitary realization kindled a raw, unyielding ember, kindling the urge to rise from the ashes. The world outside blurred into darkness. Ms. Taylor's form dissolved into the shadows, poised on the fragile edge between collapse and the faintest breath of rebellion. The night had fallen thick and cold over the suburban high school, the building seeming to lean wearily into the dark like a silent sentinel weighed down by unseen burdens. Ms. Taylor sat alone in the empty classroom, the door closed softly behind her, shutting out the muffled footsteps and distant echoes of a world that felt increasingly alien. The fluorescent lights above flickered with a ghostly rhythm, casting long, wavering shadows that clawed at the peeling walls. There danced a haunting mirror to the fractured hope deep within her. Her gaze rested on the torn resignation letter pinned haphazardly to the bulletin board, jagged edges curling upward like brittle leaves caught in a winter wind. It wasn't just paper. It was the fragile remnant of a courage battered by contempt, a symbol of dreams shattered beneath the weight of indifference and hostility. Her fingers lightly brushed the ragged paper, feeling the roughness press into her skin, an ache echoing the fissures in her spirit. The room was colder now, the chill seeping through the window panes and threading itself around her body like the creeping fingers of isolation. She pulled her vibrant blouse closer, the fabric a faint armor against the gathering gloom. The silence enveloped her, thick and suffocating, broken only by the distant school bell's toll sound, now haunting rather than hopeful, signaling not a new beginning but an endless loop of struggle. Her breath fogged the cold glass as she leaned against the window, watching the empty playground bathed in silver moonlight. The absence of laughter, of voices raised in joy or even protest, carved a hollow cavern in her chest. She traced the path of a single leaf spiraling slowly from its branch, twisting and falling helpless, adrift. It was a fragile emblem of herself, caught in currents beyond control, yet too weary to resist. A faint whisper escaped her lips, a bare thread of a question suspended in the vast emptiness. What now? The room responded with nothing but the persistent hum of a dying fluorescent tube, flickering erratically like the last flicker of her resolve. Tears welled beneath her closed lids, unnoticed and unbidden, tracing silent rivers down cheeks made of quiet determination and deep fatigue. The remnant light caught on the edge of a lone feather caught in the air vents above, drifting slowly downward as if held up only by the faintest hope. It landed gently on the torn letter, the symbol of loyalty and freedom, now adrift, its pristine white contrasting sharply against the chaos it fell upon. Ms. Taylor's fingers drifted toward the feather, trembling with fragility and weight, a metaphor unspoken but deeply felt. She cradled it briefly, a silent prayer to the fading light within her. The night deepened, shadows swallowed the edges of the room, and time slowed to a haunting pulses if the world itself was holding its breath. And in that suspended moment, Ms. Taylor chose stillness, her silhouette a fragile silhouette against darkness, the painful quiet before the storm of hope mustered anew. The early morning light seeped cautiously through the partially closed blinds of Ms. Taylor's classroom, scattering thin beams across the scattered papers and empty desks. The room was awash in a muted glow that softened the hardness of the night's shadows but could not entirely dissolve the heaviness that clung to the walls. A lone notebook rested on her desk, its pages still open, as if waiting for a voice to bring its words to life. Nearby, the torn letter, the symbol of broken resolve and fractured dreams, lay folded, its edges curling like silent wounds. Ms. Taylor sat motionless, her expression a study in fatigue and fragile resolve. Her fingers lightly brushed the worn cover of the notebook, tracing a delicate touch as if drawing strength from the inked words within. The voices of late-night thoughts murmured softly in her mind, and for a flickering moment, a delicate thread of hope pierced the shroud of despair. Outside, the distant sounds of morning stirred birds hesitant in song, the mundane stirring of the school waking to another day. The world moved on, indifferent and unyielding, yet the subtle warmth of sunlit leaves danced on the breeze, a gentle caress against the wintered landscape. A quiet cough beside her startled Ms. Taylor, and she turned to find a fellow teacher standing in the doorway, their eyes mirroring the unspoken understanding between those who walk the same difficult path. They stepped forward, placing a worn folder on the desk, a gift, an offering, an unseen ally bearing the weight of solidarity. "You're not alone," the support whispered through the tired gaze. "There are others who see, others who fight." Within the folder lay concealed a cache of documentation, videos, reports, whispers of evidence collected in secret by a trusted insider within the school's walls. It was a lifeline thrown when all seemed lost, a flicker of justice glimpsed in the dark. Ms. Taylor's breath caught, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, hesitant, fragile, but unmistakably real. The torn letter, once a symbol of defeat, now lay shadowed but not forgotten, its presence a reminder of battles fought and the scars that birthed courage. The school bell rang, a sonorous call threading through the brisk air outside, signaling not only the passing of time but a summons to rise. Her eyes lifted to the window as sunlight broke fully through the clouds, illuminating the forgotten courtyard where students gathered, a mosaic of colors and stories intertwined. The silent classroom was gone, replaced by the pulse of possibility. Ms. Taylor stood slowly, the weight of despair giving way to purpose, her shoulders squared beneath the vivid fabric of her blouse, every thread a testament to her enduring fight. Her voice, steady yet soft, breathed across the quiet room, "This fight is ours." And in the resolute set of her gaze, the world saw the birth of a new dawn, scarred, honest, unyielding, ready to reclaim the light. Light filtered in, warm and unrelenting, as the classroom door quietly opened to welcome the footsteps of allies yet to come. The first light of dawn seeped through the broken blinds, casting thin stripes of warm gold across the stained linoleum floor of the otherwise dim classroom. Slowly, the walls seemed to breathe with new life, as if the stale air was exchanging the heaviness of despair for the fragile hope of renewal. Ms. Taylor sat quietly at her desk, the scattered pieces of the torn resignation letter now gathered in a solemn pile, no longer a symbol of defeat, but a relic that had survived the storm. Outside, the distant rumble of traffic mixed with the occasional chirp of early birds, a daily symphony that seemed untouched by the battles waging inside these walls. Yet inside, the atmosphere shifted imperceptibly, oppressive shadows loosening their grip, the silence breaking into a tentative promise. Her gaze softened as she looked down at the small notebook left the day before, its pages worn and edges curled. The heartfelt writings of a student, a gentle defiance against the cold walls of hostility, had stirred something delicate but persistent within her. It was a whisper of connection, a quiet chorus of unseen voices demanding to be heard. She allowed herself a rare smile, a fleeting curve that replaced the tightness around her eyes, a testament to resilient spirit and cautious optimism. The bustling noise of students in the hallway filtered faintly through the partly ajar door, footsteps light and hurried, carrying voices that threatened to burst like spring water, eager and untamed. Ms. Taylor leaned back, the chair creaking softly beneath her. "Maybe," she whispered to the still air, "this fight isn't just mine anymore." Her fingers traced the edge of the resignation letter, now less a cry of surrender and more a map of wounds survived and battles yet to come. The damaged paper caught glints of morning light, revealing new textures and contours she hadn't noticed before, a metaphor, perhaps, for her own layered journey. In the faint glow, tiny motes of dust danced lazily, carried on sunbeams like scattered stars navigating toward dawn. It was a moment suspended between endings and beginnings, a fragile, exquisite breath of possibility. Ms. Taylor's eyes drifted toward the distant hallway, where a handful of students lingered by the lockers, their postures cautious but curious. Among them, pockets of quiet strength stirred those who had witnessed the cruelty but chose empathy, those ready to step out from shadows and walk toward light. The school bell tolled in the distance, its clarion call both a closing of past chapters and an invitation to new ones, reverberating like a heartbeat that pulsed with resilience. She rose slowly, her shadow stretching tall across the classroom, an emblem of growth and steadfast hope. As her hand lingered on the doorframe, she cast one last look back at the gathering light. "I'm not finished," she vowed, her voice firm, yet tempered with the wisdom born from battle and belief. And as she stepped forward, the room seemed to swell softly, the warmth of unfolding change warming the shadows just enough to carry promise through the stillness. The beginning had arrived not with clamorous revolution, but with the steady, unwavering pulse of a heart reclaimed. The courtroom was a collage of shadows and light, the high ceiling casting long beams that segmented the space into pockets of clarity and doubt. Ms. Taylor sat at the plaintiff's table, her fingers folded, yet her posture was a fortress of quiet defiance. The once fed ember of hope now blazed into relentless fire as she faced not only the bullies who had tried to break her but the wall of systemic injustice fortified by indifferent administrators. Her eyes, luminous and unwavering, met the sharp glances of the opposition-privileged students adorned in crisp uniforms, their faces cold masks of entitlement. Across the aisle, the defense attorneys wove their fabrications, their words slick with calculated insinuations designed to dismantle her credibility and silence her struggle. The gavel, an ancient symbol of ultimate justice, rested imposingly on the judge's bench, a focal point of the battle that stretched far beyond these courtroom walls. Ms. Taylor's opening statement echoed with a clarity honed by months of turmoil. "This is not merely about me. It is about every voice drowned by the prejudices woven into the fabric of this system. We seek truth, accountability, and the right to dignity for all students." Her voice resonated in the hushed chamber, steady and compelling. The faintest flicker of approval kindled in the eyes of some jurors, even as the opposition carved their narrative of denial and deflection. Outside, autumn rain began to drum rhythmically against the stained glass, its patter a somber percussion underscoring the gravity within. Ms. Taylor's mind flicked back to the torn resignation letter, the jagged edges a reminder of battles lost but never forfeited. As testimony unfolded, video evidence was presented, a raw tapestry of bullying, whispered conspiracies, and unmasking cruelty captured secretly by a determined student. The footage was irrefutable, yet the school's intent to bury the truth was palpable in the defensive posture of the administrators called to testify. The atmosphere thickened, a high-stakes chess game where every word could shift the balance. Ms. Taylor's support came alive quietly but powerfully, a growing cluster of students, faces flushed with hope, families holding hands tightly, silent affirmations of solidarity echoing through the courtroom's veins. In a moment punctuated by tense stillness, the court was shown evidence from a hidden camera that revealed the bullies' orchestrated narrative, the damning proof of conspiracy and deceit shimmering under scrutiny. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the judge's eyes narrowed thoughtfully, reflecting the storm of truth unfolding. Ms. Taylor exhaled, a floodgate of emotion sealed behind her steady exterior. "Justice will not be silenced," she finally spoke, voice imbued with the fierce clarity of one who carries not just her own burden but the hopes of many. Outside the courtroom window, the clouds parted, allowing rays of sunlight to pierce through, illuminating the Gavella beacon of promise in the shadowed fight. The moment hung exquisitely suspended, light against darkness, courage eclipsing fear. As the final witnesses took their seats, Ms. Taylor's heart beat in tandem with the quiet shuffles and breaths of the courtroom's denizens. Every second was a stepping stone toward redemption, each glance a tether anchoring her to the path of change. And in that fragile dawn, the promise was Olivia's whispered vow that the fight for justice, long suppressed, was awakening. The courtroom stood hushed, bathed in a solemn glow from the high windows that cast long, radiant shafts of light across polished wood and hushed faces. Ms. Taylor sat upright, her posture unyielding, the vibrant colors of her blouse now a beacon amidst the subdued tones of the room. The courtroom gavel, a timeless symbol of justice, gleamed softly, poised above the bench like a sentinel for the truth about to be unveiled. Her expressive eyes scanned the gallery where the privileged students sat, their facades cracked, tension rippling beneath their forced composure. The complicit administrators exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence eroded by the mounting proof before them. Ms. Taylor's voice resonated clearly, a powerful melody of conviction and resilience. This trial is not merely mine. It belongs to every student silenced by prejudice, every teacher dismissed for daring to speak truth, every community shackled by systemic injustice. As the judge, revealed to be a former student who had walked a similar path of struggle and courage, prepared to render the verdict, a profound stillness enveloped the room as if time itself held its breath. The judge's gavel struck sharply, echoing with the weight of culmination. The court finds in favor of Ms. Taylor. A wave of gasps and whispered affirmations surged through the courtroom. Relief, vindication, and hope mingled in the charged atmosphere. Ms. Taylor's face softened, tears glinting in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of a triumphant peace born from relentless fight and unyielding spirit. As she rose, the courtroom seemed to flood with light, both literal and symbolic, banishing the shadows that had long clung to these halls. The torn letter, once a stark symbol of her shattered dreams, now lay restored, its edges mended and its presence a testimony to healing. Stepping toward the exit, Ms. Taylor caught sight of the school bell lighting up the distant tower, its crisp toll resonating like a clarion call to change and justice. Her voice, steady and warm, carried softly to those gathered, "This victory is a beginning. We must continue to challenge, to uplift, and to build a future where every voice matters." Outside, the sunlight poured over the steps of the courthouse, carrying the promise of renewal. Ms. Taylor's silhouette stood tall against the vibrant scion emblem of hope, strength, and new beginnings. As the doors swung open, a group of students from diverse backgrounds awaited her, their eyes bright with admiration and solidarity. Together, they stepped into the light, ready to face the world united. The camera lingered on Ms. Taylor's calm, determined face, the woman who, through battle and bravery, had reclaimed dignity and justice not just for herself, but for all who would follow. And as the courtroom faded behind, her journey marched forward, a living testament to the enduring power of love, courage, and unwavering justice. The golden hue of dawn spilled softly over the city, casting a warm glow on the majestic towers and quiet streets. Inside a simple classroom, now filled with an unspoken calm, Ms. Taylor stood before her students. Her vibrant attire, no longer just a symbol of strength but a beacon of renewal, caught the first light as she looked out at the diverse group, their faces holding a silent promise of hope. Her eyes, expressive and radiant, mirrored a quiet dawn full of gentle realization. Time had pressed her to the edge, battered her resolve, and tested her faith in the fight for justice. Yet, emerging from the chaos was a clarity that shimmered like the first sunrays, faint but undeniable. She gently adjusted her clothing, the fabric a symbol of resilience, a tapestry woven with struggle and unwavering hope. Her hands, once trembling with doubt, now rested broadly at her sides, steady and calm. The torn letter she had kept, its jagged edges symbolizing shattered dreams, lay on her desk, untouched, but its significance no longer a wound, it was a crown of scars she wore proudly. Outside, the classroom window framed a scene of quiet awakening. A young girl gently released a paper boat into the flowing stream, its ripples spreading outward, a metaphor for the ripple effect of change she envisioned. The faint scent of blooming flowers filtered in, whispering stories of growth and renewal. Ms. Taylor closed her eyes momentarily, breathing in serenity. In that pause, a faint flicker of understanding blossomed, harsh wounds healed by time, open hearts mended by collective courage. The previous chaos, the pain, the tearsol had led to this moment of gentle peace. Her voice, soft yet imbued with new purpose, broke the silence. Today marks not just an end, but a beginning. We carry with us the lessons learned and the hope that true change is possible as long as we believe in the future we can build together. Her words hung in the air, tender yet powerful, inspiring a subtle awakening within each student's gaze. The classroom, once a battleground of prejudice, now shimmered with a fragile light, hope flickering anew. The sunlight, spilling through the window, danced on her face, illuminating the quiet strength that had carried her through darkness. The moment deepened into a cinematic tableau. A seated circle of students of all backgrounds, their faces uplifted in shared purpose, their silence filled with understanding, a silent vow whispered between generations. The camera pulled away slowly, capturing the scene of unity, a testament that even in the aftermath of turmoil, serenity and hope could blossom. The classroom became more than just a space for learning, it transformed into a sanctuary of shared purpose and unspoken promise. And as the first light of day persisted, casting long shadows and tender warmth alike, Ms. Taylor's gaze lingered on her students, her heart quietly swelling with hope, the dawn of genuine change, an unbreakable seed planted in collective hearts. The courtyard basked in the glow of the setting sun, casting a golden halo over the gathered students and faculty, their faces illuminated with a mixture of relief, hope, and recognition. Ms. Taylor stood at the center, her posture calm and steady, a radiant smile faintly touching her lips. Her vibrant attire seemed to shimmer with the warmth of the moment, a symbol of resilience and renewal woven into every thread. Around her, the diverse group of students, faces of all backgrounds, moved closer, their differences dissolving into a shared purpose. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, whispering promises of change carried across generations, as if nature itself sanctioned this silent revolution. She looked out over the crowd, her expressive eyes shining with the light of understanding and forgiveness. The tears she had fought to hold back finally slipped free, glistening in the sunlight, tears of victory, of healing, of a journey that transcended pain to reach profound peace. With a quiet voice, she addressed them, "This is not just an ending, it's a new beginning. We've shown that change is possible, that compassion can carve through even the deepest shadows. Today, we lay down the burdens of injustice and embrace the strength of unity." Her words echoed softly but reverberated deeply, inspiring a ripple of applause and heartfelt agreement. The once silenced classroom, now bathed in the collective light of understanding, became a symbol of happy and enduring testament that love, courage, and shared purpose could forge lasting peace. In that silent, powerful moment, the camera panned slowly, capturing the faces of students of every hue, smiling, nodding, reaching for each other's hands, a mosaic of hope stitched together in an act of collective healing. The sky above sparkled with the first stars of evening, their gentle glimmers like a promise whispered from the universe itself. The scene held an emotional pause, timeless and poignant, as the group stood united, a tableau vivant of reconciliation and future promise. In the core of that shared silence, a profound truth was etched. Justice is not merely an end, but a beginning, rekindled in the hearts of those daring to believe. The classroom was cloaked in a gentle, golden hush as daylight spilled across the desks, the air thick with the promise of renewal. Ms. Taylor stood at the front, her vibrant attire softly illuminated by the warm glow of the afternoon sun filtering through expansive windows. The stage of her triumph was quiet, but its resonance echoed through every corner of the space. Beneath the shadows of past injustice, a new understanding took root. She gazed across the room, capturing the faces of her students, every hue, every story, intertwined in a collective mosaic of hope. The glowing light reflected in their eyes, yet she saw marine and spoken acknowledgement of the struggles faced and the victories earned. A gentle, unseen wind wafted through the open windows, stirring the boundless potential of change, an allegory for the winds of transformation sweeping across the once still landscape. The symbol of the torn letter, representing shattered dreams, now lay crumpled yet discarded, replaced by a new page open with possibilities. Ms. Taylor's hand slowly lifted, reaching toward her heart. Her fingers traced the faint outline of the royal crest necklace she now wore, not as a symbol lost but as a testament reclaimed. The vibrant fabric fluttered slightly, a silent tribute to resilience, strength, and hope. In the quiet moment, she allowed herself a breath deep, full of purpose and peace. Every ache, every tear, had forged her into a beacon guiding other, a lighthouse punctuating the storm. Her gaze lingered on the mosaic of young faces, their silent consent a symphony of shared purpose. A solitary chair, once occupied by doubt and despair, now stood empty, an emblem of the past and a vessel awaiting the future. The room held its breath in reverence, a place where stories of pain had morphed into stories of strength. The camera gradually receded, capturing the profound stillness, a tableau of harmony amid the chaos once endured, a silent ode to the enduring power of love, courage, and collective healing. The sunlight, soft and omnipresent, cocooned the space in an everlasting embrace. And in that timeless momenta, silent, cinematic pause, the classroom became a sanctuary, a haven where shared purpose blossomed into lasting peace, promising that the journey toward justice and dignity would forever continue, rooted in the hearts of those willing to believe. How would you handle injustice? Share your thoughts below.